A long-haired woman smiles softly, her dark hair catching the light. She tenderly embraces a man by the dark, crashing waves of the shore. Suddenly, the man finds himself submerged underwater, wide-eyed and gasping for air. Haesang wakes up in a cold sweat, a heavy rain sounding with a swish as it taps against the window. He sits alone in his dim room, the weight of the dream still lingering. Reminders of his psychiatrist appointment and medication sit beside his bed, highlighting his ongoing struggle. At the clinic, the rain continues to fall while his doctor welcomes him back after a long absence. Wearing a cap and hoodie, Haesang listens as the doctor asks about his transition to university life. A quick scritch sounds as Haesang writes that the rain prevents him from speaking, prompting questions about a past friend. The doctor turns his gaze toward a peaceful painting hanging on the office wall. A gentle swish sounds from the painted waves, evoking memories of a bright, sunny beach. A sudden splash echoes as the scene shifts back to a vibrant, sun-drenched day from the past. Young Haesang dashes across the sand, enthusiastically playing with his yellow toy submarine. He grins widely, pretending to later a high-stakes maritime mission. He rushes toward a rocky cave, declaring his ship has reached incredible depths. Haesang laughs off the diver's warnings about the incoming tide, fueled by childhood wonder. He triumphantly enters the mouth of the cave, narrating his successful arrival. A sudden rustle makes him flinch, his excitement turning into cautious curiosity at an unexpected sound. Hearing a faint whimper, he takes a careful step forward, realizing another child might be inside. The memory flickers to a somber funeral where a grieving Haesang weeps for his late father. He sobs inconsolably, the loss of his father leaving a deep scar on his young heart. Back in the cave, the young boy nervously asks if the mysterious figure is all right. His toy submarine falls with a thud and rolls toward a shimmering tail trapped in a fishing net. Haesang stares in absolute shock as he discovers a real mermaid tangled and struggling. The exhausted mermaid suddenly slumps over, losing consciousness from the ordeal. She hits the ground with a plop, and Haesang rushes over in a panic to help. Outside the cave, the ocean waves continue their rhythmic swish against the shore. Later, the black-haired mermaid floats peacefully in the shallows, now wearing Haesang's white shirt. She begins to rise from the water, her expression dazed but calm. Haesang greets her from the rocks, having discarded the net that once bound her. He cheerfully insists she keep his shirt as they talk by the water's edge. He stares at her earnestly, confessing his loneliness and his desire to be her friend. When he asks for her name, the mermaid reveals she doesn't have one. Haesang ponders the situation while lying on the rocks beside her. He suggests the name Yunhei, and she repeats it curiously. He explains it means shiny ocean, named after the cave where their bond began. Haesang offers a friendly hand, hoping to solidify their new companionship. Yunhei looks up at him with uncertainty, unused to such human gestures of kindness. He gives her a warm, genuine smile that radiates pure joy. The two children hold hands, bridging the gap between land and sea. Under a bright full moon, they sit together and watch the shimmering night tide. They lie back to watch a meteor shower, cherishing every fleeting moment of their secret friendship. Their days are filled with wonder as they explore the coastal waters together. Haesang lets out a loud herk at the salty seafood, while Yunhei enjoys a sweet chocolate bar. Yunhei wistfully wishes she were human so she could provide him with better gifts. Haesang reassures her by praising her incredible swimming skills, though he remains on the safety of the rocks. He looks down at the water, admitting he is a coward who is deeply afraid of the sea. Yunhei gazes at him intently, asking for the source of his fear. He somberly explains that the ocean took his father's life while he was working. Yunhei leans forward, gently asking if he would still be afraid if they entered the water together. Young Hee-sung stands on the shore, nervously asking Yoon-hae if she'll save him as a gulp sounds. A wiggle sounds as Hae-sung tentatively steps into the water, his foot submerged as he faces his fear. Within the cave, Yoon-hae offers her hand to the trembling boy, who declines while struggling to stay upright. A splash sounds as the cold water rises, and Hae-seong feels an unnatural force pulling him further down. Suddenly, a grab and pull sound as dozens of ghostly hands emerge from the depths to seize him. Fear consumes Hae-sung as a chorus of huffs and pants sound while dark hands yank at his shirt. With a splash and an ack sounding, a hand reaches out and grabs Hae-sung to pull him back. Breathless huffs sound as Hye-sung stares at Yoon-hae in shock, realizing she has rescued him from his nightmare. Yoon-hae looks at him with concern, asking if he is all right after his terrifying ordeal in the water. Hye-sung trembles and reaches for her hand, desperately pleading for her to hold on to him as he recovers. Their hands finally meet and interlock, providing the young boy with a sense of security and companionship. A bubble sounds as they dive together, Hye-sung's fear replaced by the wonder of the underwater world. An sounds and a wobble follows as Hye-sung reacts with overwhelming emotion to Yoon-hae's supportive presence. A squeeze sounds as Hye-sung takes comfort in their bond, feeling reassured by Yoon-hae's gentle touch and words. Yoon-hae encourages him to look around, guiding him to see the beauty of the sea through her eyes. Standing in the sunlit cave, she tells him that he is safe in the water now that she's here. Deep underwater, Hye-sung confesses that he is no longer afraid because they are holding hands together. Yoon-hae reveals that she also lost her father, but finds peace and happiness now that she has him. Hye-sung smiles, deeply moved that his friendship has helped ease the mermaid's loneliness as much as hers. Time passes, and a teenage Hae-sung stands by the winter sea, calling out a final, bittersweet goodbye. He promises that their friendship will be eternal, despite the distance and his necessary departure from the shore. He leaves his yellow toy submarine on the rocks, hoping she will keep it safe until his return. A splash sounds as he casts his gaze toward the horizon, weeping as he walks away from their sanctuary. Years later, Hae-seong looks at himself in a mirror, holding a seashell to his ear in quiet contemplation. Overcome by doubt, he decides it is finally time to let go of the memories of his mermaid friend. He splashes water onto his face, trying to wash away the lingering grief and move on with his life. A sudden grab sounds as a hand reaches out from the sink's water, startling Hae-sung mid-motion. A shiver and a doom sound as Hae-sung flails in panic, held fast by mysterious hands in the sink. A squeeze sounds and a tremble follows as he desperately orders the unknown presence to release his hands immediately. An sounds as Hae-sung gasps in terror, struggling to understand who could possibly be reaching for him. A da-dun sounds as a familiar voice calls his name, causing Hye-sung's heart to race with sudden recognition. A soft caress sounds as a voice from the water pleads for him to hold on to her once again. Gasping with huffs of shock, Hae-sung stares down as a mysterious light begins to glow within the sink. A vision of their childhood hand-holding flashes before his eyes, blurring the lines between the past and present. A jolt sounds as he pauses in mid-air, a single word of realization beginning to form in his mind. He whispers Yoon-hae's name, his disbelief clashing with the undeniable proof manifest in the basin before him. A grab sounds as the wet hands pull him closer, bridging the years of silence with a sudden touch. With a splash, Yoon-hae emerges from the sink, her eyes filled with tears as she looks at him. She lunges forward and embraces him, confessing how much she missed him during their long years apart. Yoonhae asks why he is crying, wondering if her sudden, miraculous appearance has caused him any sadness. Overwhelmed, Haesung weeps while Yoonhae perches on the sink, the two finally reunited in the most unexpected place. A bubble sounds as Yoonhae explains that she came all this way simply because she missed him too much. Haesung blushes in shock, amazed by the directness of her affection as she splashes in the bathtub. A bubble sounds as she dips back into the water, confirming her feelings with a simple, honest affirmation. Haesung looks down into the water, calling out to Yoonhae as she disappears beneath the surface once again. An appear sounds as a finger suddenly pokes Haesung's cheek, catching him off guard during his moment of concern. Yoonhae playfully teases him from the sink, asserting that she can find him anywhere, no matter where he goes. She points at him with a mischievous, radiant smile, her joy at their reunion lighting up the small bathroom. A sudden slam and a "hey" sound from the door, startling both of them as someone demands entry. Haesung panics and urges Yoonhae to hide, realizing he must protect her secret from the aggressive person outside. Haesung apologizes as a creak and clack sound from the doorway, startling the red-haired woman inside. A sharp slap sounds as the woman strikes Haesung's face, leaving him stunned and pained in the darkness. She berates him as a clunk and wobble sound follows when she storms out, calling him a moron. Haesung and his sister Haebin lie in separate beds, a plop sounding as they settle behind a curtain. An older teacher places a hand on Haesung's shoulder, advising the top student to avoid dark thoughts. Sharing his own experience of loss, the teacher urges the young man to remain strong and undiscouraged. A clock sounds as Haesung leaves the office, only to be greeted by his cheerful school friends. His friends enthusiastically suggest playing soccer, betting snacks on the outcome of the match. They laugh while gossiping about the arrogance of another class, though Haesung remains quiet during the banter. Two girls approach the group in the hallway, offering a polite greeting to the boys. A pink-haired girl named Yoonsol smiles brightly, confirming Haesung's identity with a shy, hopeful expression. Haesung looks surprised as Yoonsol admits she has heard many good things about his looks and grades. She invites him to a group dinner, causing a wave of excitement among the surrounding students. A sudden shiver and shock sound as Yoonsol reacts with intense alarm to an unspoken thought. His friends explain his high academic standing, noting he is too busy studying for his exams. A scratch sounds as Haesung politely declines the invitation, thanking the girls for the kind offer. Yoonsol slumps in defeat while a shake sounds as her friend Soonbin teases her about the rejection. A flash sounds as Yoonsol's expression turns cold, abruptly asking to postpone the dinner by one day. Soonbin declares her intent to claim Haesung for herself, offering a chilling smile and an okay sign. The afternoon sun fills the classroom as students relax and chat during a break between lessons. Classmates crowd around Haesung's desk, offering him snacks and friendly conversation to make him feel included. A somber memory shows young Haesung holding flowers at a hospital bedside while his grandmother weeps. In a flashback, a woman furiously argues with her husband about taking in his sister's children. A sniffle sounds as young Haesung and Haebin huddle by the door, listening to the heated adult argument. Haesung tries to feed his sister, but Haebin stubbornly refuses to eat in their new hostel home. A whack sounds as a stick strikes the young girl, causing her to cry out in sudden pain. A teary sound follows as Haesung pulls his sobbing sister into a protective embrace, trying to stay brave. The aunt's eyes glare from the shadows as she threatens to kick both children onto the streets. Haebin wails "Ooh-ah" while Haesung holds her, both trembling under the aunt's cold, judgmental presence. Multiple slap sounds echo as the aunt strikes both children, ordering them to stop their crying immediately. Present-day Haesung clutches his head in agony, overwhelmed by the traumatic memories of his childhood. A drop sounds as blood falls onto Haesung's homework, signaling his extreme physical and mental exhaustion. He touches his nose in shock, realizing he has a nosebleed as he stares at the red stains. A vision of the mermaid Yoonhae appears in his mind, providing a sharp contrast to his current misery. Back in the bathroom, Haesung thanks Yoonhae while she playfully splashes in the full bathtub. Yoonhae rests her chin on her hands at the water's edge, smiling warmly at her human friend. A flashback recalls the moment young Haesung first discovered Yoonhae in the cave with his toy submarine. Haesung admits that Yoonhae is a massive part of his life, giving him the strength to endure. He promises to leave this house once he is grown so they can spend more time together. Yoonhae leans in, asking if he would be happier if his abusive aunt simply wasn't there anymore. Haesung looks away with a sad smile, admitting that his life would indeed be better without her. His expression hardens as he confesses his secret wish for the woman to just disappear forever. Yoonhae watches him with deep, teary eyes, processing the intensity of his long-held hatred and pain. She dives back into the water with a quiet acknowledgement, her tail vanishing beneath the blue surface. The next morning, Haesung prepares breakfast for Haebin, asking how she wants her eggs cooked today. He serves the food, gently telling Haebin to put her phone away while they share their meal. A clatter sounds as the siblings eat together, the kitchen filled with a brief moment of domestic peace. Haebin mentions that the aunt hasn't been home for a long time, wondering if something has happened. Later that night, a creak and bang sound as Haesung jolts awake from his sleep in a panic. He gasps in disbelief, finding the house completely trashed and realizing the abusive woman has left them again. A clock sounds as Haesung returns home, stepping into the dim bathroom with a weary expression. He kneels by the entrance, carefully inspecting the shoe cabinet to see who is currently in the house. Haesung realizes with a start that everyone's shoes are present, indicating that no one has left the apartment. Deep beneath the ocean waves, long tresses of dark reddish hair swirl violently in the cold blue currents. The lifeless body of his aunt, Myung Kem, drifts toward a distant, shimmering light in the watery depths. Back in the bathroom, Yoonhae notes Haesung's exhaustion while he worries about their lack of money and upcoming exams. Leaning against the tub, Yoonhae offers a mysterious solution, claiming she can connect the bathwater directly to Mole Island. Haesung asks if he can travel through the water too, and Yoonhae smiles while confirming his hopeful theory. Yoonhae asks if he has seen his aunt lately, mentioning the woman hasn't been home for a long time. Looking down from above, Yoonhae reminds him that she only appears when he specifically calls for her presence. Haesung sits on the floor, clarifying that she only emerges when he is around, which she gently confirms. Relief washes over Haesung's face as he realizes the mermaid is safe and hasn't been seen by his aunt. A sudden bang sounds at the door, startling Haesung as he wonders who could be visiting so late. A man in a patterned shirt stands at the threshold, demandingly asking for the whereabouts of Myung Kim. Haesung claims ignorance, identifying himself as the woman's nephew, while his hand trembles on the door handle. The man growls in frustration, realizing the woman has fled with his money and left the children behind. A sudden grab sounds as the man forces his way in, snarling that he isn't finished with their conversation. Looming over the terrified boy, the man reveals his criminal past and asserts that his aunt's disappearance isn't his problem. A school answer sheet appears, filled with marks that represent the weight of Haesung's current academic struggle. Students murmur in the classroom as Haesung admits he performed poorly on the exam, his mind clearly elsewhere. His friends lean in with concern, noticing his pale complexion and asking if he is feeling physically ill. A classmate tries to cheer him up, mentioning that the girls postponed their dinner plans specifically for his sake. Outside the school, the group discusses taking a cab while Haesung remains quiet and visibly on edge. A series of bump sounds echo as Hyesong's heart races, spotting the dangerous men waiting near the school. A heavy thump sounds as Hyesong ducks out of sight, desperately trying to hide from the men at the gate. His face contorts in panic as he realizes the debt collectors have followed him all the way to school. Sweating profusely, Hyesong waits for the cab to arrive while his friends remain oblivious to the looming threat. The man from the apartment, recognized as the boss, offers a subtle nod as he scans the departing crowd. From the shadows, the men identify Hyesong by his green backpack, confirming they have found their target. Multiple thump sounds follow the men as they stalk through the school gate, closing in on the group. More thump sounds accompany Hyesong's sheer terror when a voice suddenly calls out to him from behind. The men corner him, mockingly asking if he truly believed he could hide from them in plain sight. The two intimidating figures stare him down, their expressions cold and unforgiving as they trap the young student. A vroom sounds as a student watches from the window of the moving cab, leaving Hyesong behind. Inside the car, a gasp and pant sound as Hyesong's friends wonder if he's suffering from severe car sickness. Hyesong wheezes and gasps in distress while the driver warns him not to make a mess in the vehicle. At the restaurant, the boys wait for the girls to arrive, speculating that they are busy with their makeup. A friend asks why he looks so sick, and a pained Hyesong offers a quiet, stuttered apology in return. When asked if something happened at home, Hyesong quickly dismisses the concern, claiming that everything is perfectly fine. A sudden jolt sounds as Hyesong stands up, urgently demanding to borrow a phone to contact his sister. Haibin answers her phone at a snack bar, listening as her brother warns her not to return home tonight. A heavy sigh sounds as Hyesong hangs up, relieved that Haibin is safe and heading to a friend's house. Hyesong drops Haibin off with a neighbor, apologizing for the suddenness while asking them to keep her safe. He hands Haibin her phone, instructing her to stay out of trouble while she reminds him not to read her messages. Hyesong's thumb hovers over the screen as he begins to dial 911, realizing they desperately need professional help. Standing in the dark stairwell, he resolves to call the police immediately if the men are still waiting. He cautiously peers around the corner of the hallway, noticing that the men are nowhere to be seen. A series of beep-beep sounds accompany him entering his code, planning to grab essentials and change his number. The door opens to reveal the boss waiting inside the dark apartment, a sinister smile crossing his scarred face. A sudden grab sounds as the larger man seizes Hyesong, snatching the phone away before he can complete the emergency call. The man in the patterned shirt pushes Hyesong toward the bathroom while a loud crack sounds from the boss's knuckles. A sharp grab sounds as the boss seizes Hyesong's hair, threatening him for failing to find Mi-young Kim. Hyesong is shoved forward with a sudden push, stumbling in confusion as the men corner him in the apartment. A frantic rush sounds as Hyung flees into the bathroom, pursued by the large man and the scarred boss. The door shuts with a heavy slam as the boss laughs at Hyesong's futile attempt to escape. Hyesong cringes as a bang sounds against the door, the boss mockingly asking if he thinks this is a game. Hyesong's heart thumps loudly as he trembles in terror, his hands clenching as he desperately wonders what to do. A heavy slam and thud sound as Hyesong collapses against the bathtub, trapped by his intimidating pursuers. The boss and the patterned shirt man reflect in the mirror, deciding to escalate their threats beyond mere intimidation. A stomp and chuckle sound as the large man grabs Hyesong's head, discussing tools meant for Mi-young Kim. The large man's face looms with a sense of doom as he contemplates which of their own tools to use. Hyesong shudders in pain as his head is squeezed, frantically choosing the shower head over being burnt. A squeeze sounds as the large man holds the shower head, and the boss tells Hyesong he shouldn't have run. A sudden jolt and screech sound as the shower hose is yanked violently, startling the man in the patterned shirt. With a powerful yank and splash, the large man is dragged toward the tub, crying out in shock. The boss watches in annoyance, ordering his associate to stop embarrassing himself and just stand up. A frantic flail and gasp sound as the man is pulled deeper into the water by an unseen force. A muffled sound follows as the man is completely submerged, his legs kicking helplessly above the bathtub's edge. Hyesung stares in shock as the boss screams out Seongtae's name, realizing his associate is in trouble. The boss shouts again while his associate continues to flail, unaware of the danger lurking within the water. Long tresses pull the boss toward the tub, while Hyesung watches from the floor in absolute horror. Hyesung breathes with heavy huff sounds, his expression distorted by the terrifying violence unfolding before his eyes. Deep beneath the surface, the mermaid Yoonhae watches with a cold, focused expression as she claims her victims. Bubble sounds rise to the surface as Yoonhae drags both men down into the watery abyss of the tub. The mermaid swims toward the light with one man, while the other drifts lifelessly into the dark depths. Yoonhae emerges from the water, her long dark hair clinging to her as she gazes sadly at Hyesung. Rainwater falls with a swa sound against the window, the scene shifting to a quiet, decorated office. Present-day Hyesung explains that the police intervention resolved the situation, his expression weary but calm. A creak sounds as Hyesung leaves the consultation, having told the doctor that therapy will not help him. Hyesung pays the clinic fee at the reception desk, flatly refusing to book any further appointments. Heavy step sounds echo as Hyung descends the stairs, hearing the distant, haunting sob of his past. A cover sound follows as Hyesung clutches his ears, overwhelmed by the memory of his own desperate crying. In a memory, Yoonhae cradles the sobbing boy, asking what he plans to do about the tragic situation. Hyesung trembles with guilt, admitting that he feels responsible for the deaths that occurred in the bathroom. Yoonhae gazes at him tenderly, insisting that she was the one who committed the act, not him. Hyesung offers a pained stare, questioning how the mermaid can be so untroubled by the loss of life. Yoonhae explains that she acted because the men were hurting him, believing they deserved to disappear forever. Holding his face, Yoonhae confesses that her happiness is tied to his existence and she won't lose him. A shudder runs through Hyesung as he realizes how much Yoonhae has changed, her logic becoming increasingly alien. Yoonhae retorts that Hyesung is the one who changed, noting the differences in his personality over 6 years. Hyesung feels dizzy with confusion, struggling to reconcile their domestic conversation with the brutal murder she committed. Outside the school, a student complains about the difficulty of the exam under a bright, clear sky. His friends joke about his lack of studying, walking together while Hyesung remains lost in his own thoughts. A friend gives Hyesung a friendly hug, asking why he is walking alone and if everything is okay. Hyesung walks down the street, reflecting on the grim humor of the events that have shaped his life. Back in the memory, Hyesung tells Yoonhae he must focus on his studies and protect his family now. With a squeeze and pull, Hyesung removes her hands, declaring that they shouldn't see each other anymore. Looking down at the tub, Hyesung asks the mermaid to find her happiness elsewhere, ending their long connection. A pause sound follows as Hyesung arrives home, noting the extra shoes in the entryway with growing apprehension. Hyesung spots his uncle with several men in the living room, being told to head straight to his room. 2 plainclothes detectives arrive at the apartment, asking Hyesung to join them for a private conversation. Seeing their badges, Hyesung realizes with a jolt that these men are police officers conducting an official investigation. The bearded detective breaks the heavy news, solemnly informing the young boy that his aunt has passed away. A quick, nervous gulp escapes Hyesung as he feels a wave of relief that they aren't here about the thugs. The detectives observe Hyesung curiously, noting that he seems far too calm for someone who just lost a guardian. Hyesung flinches as his uncle angrily disparages the deceased woman, revealing her history of abuse and shoplifting habits. From outside the balcony, the four figures remain locked in their tense discussion behind the thin white blinds. A telephone rings in a dark room where a red-haired woman sits alone on the floor with scattered papers. A sharp click sounds as the woman smiles creepily into her phone, beckoning someone to come home soon. A sudden, loud crash echoes as she raises a kitchen knife, her eyes wild with a violent, murderous intent. Keypad beeps follow as the woman stands in the flashing light, repeating her chilling promise to kill him. Rain falls with a heavy sound as she stands on a city street, watching a yellow taxi drive away. The taxi speeds across a bridge through the downpour while the driver wonders if he should have reported her. The woman suddenly looms against the car window, her pale face and raised knife appearing like a terrifying specter. A loud vroom sounds as the driver panics, the woman screaming and clinging to the vehicle while it swerves. The driver shouts for her to get lost, pressing the pedal until the car wobbles and she is thrown. A sudden whoosh sounds as the woman disappears over the bridge railing, falling into the dark river below. The empty taxi sits under the streetlights, marking the spot where the driver later confessed his role in the accident. Hyesung listens as the detective describes his aunt's mental struggles, realizing Yoonhae was not responsible for this specific death. With a sudden movement, the detectives rise to leave, thanking the family for their cooperation in the brief inquiry. The uncle casually makes plans to leave for Busan, leaving the traumatized boy to wander back to his room. Hyesung stares at his hands, consumed by the terrifying knowledge of what Yoonhae did to the men in the bathroom. His hand makes a soft tap against an old photo album, a physical bridge to the memories of his past. Haibin pulls the curtain aside, telling her brother that Grandma Malsuk is calling him on the telephone. A dull plop sounds as Hyesung sinks to the floor, answering the call with a sense of growing dread. His face pales as he listens to the voice on the other end, unable to comprehend the tragic news. He looks at an old photograph of his parents, a frozen moment of happiness before their lives were shattered. A soft flap sounds as he turns the pages, seeing images of his mother during much simpler, happier times. Young Hee-sung gazes at the pictures with longing, innocently wondering if his mother will be coming home soon. He remembers his mother tenderly caring for Haibin, asking him to help her with small chores around the house. Holding a jar of swabs, the young boy feels a pang of loneliness as he misses his biological father. He finds his sister lying quietly on the porch, the absence of their mother casting a long, cold shadow. When he asks where Mom went, Haibin looks up with a confused expression, questioning which mother he means. The young boy's world crumbles as his sister flatly states that they no longer have a mother at all. Spotting a boat at the harbor, Hyesung excitedly points it out, believing his mother has finally returned from diving. A mechanical whir sounds as the boat moves through the water, the children watching from the sun-drenched pier. Hyesung argues with his sister, desperately trying to convince himself that their mother is still waiting for them. With a sudden dash, the boy runs toward the docking area, his heart racing with hope and fear. He stands on the wooden pier, shouting for his mother at the top of his lungs across the water. Everything becomes quiet as he approaches the vessel, the empty deck offering no signs of life or movement. A voice suddenly calls his name, drawing his attention toward the stern of the silent, bobbing boat. He peers through the glass of the cabin, his small voice echoing as he searches for any sign of her. The boy looks over the side of the boat, noticing the seagulls circling a dark shape in the water. Feathers drift through the air as Hyesung's eyes widen in absolute horror at what he has just discovered. A grisly sight greets him as birds swarm a lifeless body floating in the blood-stained water of the harbor. Terror consumes the young boy as he stares at the tragic scene, the image seared forever into his memory. 6 years later, Haesong and Haibin lie awake in their mourning clothes, sweating under the weight of fresh grief. Haesong stands before the funeral altar, the white flowers and fruit offerings a stark contrast to his dark suit. The portrait of his mother gazes back with a gentle smile, a painful reminder of everything he has lost. He carefully places a stick of incense in the burner, whispering a pained apology for failing her expectations. The portrait of a pink-haired woman smiles from among white funeral flowers, marking a somber occasion. Haesong's face is stained with tears as he weeps silently, overwhelmed by the weight of his mother's passing. A sun-drenched memory of the mother holding her children's hands by the sea offers a painful contrast to the present. At the funeral meal, Haesong's uncle asks his friends how they managed to travel so far to attend. Picking his teeth, the uncle crudely jokes that the boys only came to skip school, laughing at their expense. The uncle's cruelty deepens as he claims the boys care more for Haesong than his own departed mother did. A sharp choke and jolt of shock hit Haesong as his friends stare in disbelief at the man's callousness. The friends defend Haesong, questioning the uncle's rudeness while the older man dismisses their concern with another laugh. Haesong wears a mourning armband as he checks his friend's departure schedule, his expression guarded and weary. After the wavy-haired boy asks about the uncle's behavior, Haesong explains the man is simply a mean drunk. A mechanical whir sounds as the elevator doors open, and Haesong's friends bid him a somber farewell. Outside, the two students look back with pained expressions, deeply worried about leaving their friend behind. Standing alone, Haesong reminds himself to be strong for his little sister, the only family he has left. The wavy-haired boy suddenly bursts into tears, prompting his friends to offer a supportive hug and encouragement. Inside the quiet hall, young Haibin sits huddled on the floor, her small frame dwarfed by the funeral arrangements. Haesong pulls his sister into a comforting hug, silently acknowledging the bond that will sustain them. Soft whisper sounds follow as the siblings find comfort in speaking their hometown dialect together during the wake. Haesong tries to lighten the heavy mood by teasing Haibin about her accent, eliciting a small moment of normalcy. Haibin resolves to stop her sadness after the funeral, believing their mother would want them to be happy. Before the portrait, Haesong vows to become strong so he can properly care for his younger sister. Haibin promises to stay by his side forever, provided he never does anything bad or illegal. The word murder hangs in Haesong's thoughts as he realizes the dangerous secrets he must now protect. Haesong stares intensely, repeating his promise to be there for her as long as he avoids the dark path. Rainwater falls with a tap-tap sound against the glass as the scene shifts away from the morning hall. Under a bright school sky, a teacher asks the students if they have checked their midterm exam grades. Students whisper curiously to one another, wondering why the teacher suddenly mentioned Hyesong's name in class. A zip sound echoes as Haesong packs his bag, his mind clearly elsewhere as he prepares to leave. A loud clonk sounds as a student kicks a soda can, venting their frustration with an angry shout. Haesong's friends pant and huff with rage, furious that the teacher would publicly bring up Haesong's private life. When the wavy-haired friend suggests reporting the teacher, Haesong calmly insists that he is perfectly fine. With a quick wave, Haesong rushes off to pick up his sister from school while his friends shout goodbyes. Haibin stands with her schoolmates, her face a mask of quiet sorrow as she waits for her brother. When she identifies her brother to her friends, they gush over how handsome the older boy looks. Haesong arrives and explains his early dismissal, greeted by the excited stares of Haibin's giggling friends. The girls compare him to a famous actor while Haesong bashfully admits he doesn't know who that is. Haibin flinches as a friend asks about her supposed trip to Jeju Island, mentioning a boy's claims. Hyesung realizes the girl lied to her peers to hide the funeral, keeping her tragic reality a secret. Haibin begins to tremble as her friends try to catch the boy who spread the conflicting rumor. The nervous boy claims his mother told him the truth, but the girls remain skeptical of his words. Hyesung gently pats the boy's head, asking him to tell his mother that Haibin definitely went to Jeju. While eating ice cream together, Hyesung reassures his sister that lying about their tragedy is sometimes necessary. A movie screen depicts a joyful birthday party for Charlotte, filled with mascots and a bright cake. On screen, parents embrace their daughter with love, a sight that cuts deep for the orphaned siblings. A quiet sniffle sounds in the dark theater as Hyesung watches his sister, feeling a wave of regret. Realizing the film is too painful, Hyesung offers to leave, and his sister quietly agrees to go home. Food makes sizzle and crackle sounds in a pan as they share a meal to recover from the movie. Hyesung encourages Haibin to eat up, watching her closely as they share a quiet moment at a restaurant. Hyesung reflects on his mistake, feeling terrible for exposing his sister to a movie about happy families. As he cooks, Hyesung asks Haibin about Mole Island, and she admits her father is a total stranger. A bright memory reveals the father's joy at Haibin's first word, while the neighbors celebrate with laughter. Young Haibin wonders if she ever had birthday parties, and Hyesung confirms they were once massive celebrations. Over a shared meal, Haibin admits she prefers their current life, sparking a curious question from her brother. A beautiful vision depicts their mother as a graceful mermaid swimming deep beneath the sunlit ocean waves. The siblings share a blissful memory of lying on the sand with their mother, their faces glowing with joy. In the present, the rain pours as Haibin insists on running, while Hyesung urgently tells her to wait. Despite the warning, Haibin dashes into the wet street, leaving her brother shouting for her to stop immediately. A loud honk blares as a car's blinding headlights illuminate Haibin, who is frozen in the rainy road. Haibin's eyes widen in sheer terror as the vehicle closes in, the rain streaking across her pale face. Panicked onlookers cry out in horror, desperately asking if she was hit while calling for emergency help. Hyesung sprints across the crosswalk toward his sister, who lies motionless on the pavement in the downpour. Bystanders murmur in concern as Hyesung reaches Haibin, who groans in pain while a man asks if she is okay. A soft rise and top-top sound follows as Haibin sits up, tearfully apologizing for running against his orders. Relieved, Hyesung pulls his sister into a tight hug as she reassures him she only has a few scratches. Resting in bed with a bandage, Haibin hopes that any spirits they encounter are simply their departed parents. At school, Soonbin complains about a terrible report, while Hyesung offers a lighthearted joke to cheer him up. Hyesung enters the faculty room and greets the teacher, who casually invites the boy to take a seat. An awkward silence fills the room as the teacher clears his throat with a loud ahem before speaking. Under a clear blue sky, the students excitedly plan a trip to karaoke to celebrate the end of class. The pink-haired Solby Lee stands with her friends in the hallway, looking cheerful as they discuss their plans. Soonbin and his glasses-wearing friend readily agreed to join the group outing, looking forward to the fun. The group of 5 students huddled together in the bright school corridor, finalizing their plans for the afternoon. Soonbin looks confused as he asks the girls what they are whispering about during their group conversation. A sharp grin crosses Soonbin's face as he teases the masked girl about her obvious crush on Hyesung. Annoyed by the teasing, Solby grabs Soonbin by his collar while their friends watch the chaotic interaction. Hyesung admits he isn't much of a singer, but Soonbin and his friend encourage him to come anyway. A loud ding-dong sounds as the school bell rings, signaling the start of their post-school activities. Soonbin playfully warns the girls not to be late as Silby waves a cheerful goodbye from the doorway. Silby's friends excitedly gush over the way Haesung was looking at her, fueling the girls' growing confidence. Posing amidst a backdrop of hearts, Solby basks in the praise of being called the school's hottest girl. Outside, Solby dismisses her father's offer for a ride over the phone while the boys wait nearby. Soonbin asks about the caller, and Solby explains she had to stop her overprotective father from driving them. Soonbin cracks a joke about Solby running behind her dad's car, much to her playful annoyance as they walk. The group laughs together as Solby worries her father might even follow them into the karaoke room. Soonbin makes a joke about calling everyone's parents, but a sharp gasp sounds as he realizes his mistake. Realizing he mentioned parents to the orphan siblings, Soonbin awkwardly sprints away while the others look on. A haunting vision depicts the heavy burden of mourning as Haesung stands alone in an endless, dark void. Inside the karaoke room, Soonbin sings his heart out with dramatic flair, completely lost in the music. A loud beep sounds as the machine rates his singing as terrible, prompting roars of laughter from his friends. Sulbi informs the black-haired Yoonsol that it is her turn to sing, and she readily accepts the microphone. Yoonsol pauses the music, claiming she needs to vent about a terrible situation involving her mother. The girls sympathize as Yoonsol complains about her unfair curfew, unaware of the deeper tragedies others face. Silby seizes her chance to flirt, asking Haesung how long he can stay before he has to leave. Haesung explains that his young sister cannot be left alone, and Solby tilts her head in curious confusion. When Silby asks if his parents are working, Soonbin quickly interjects to stop her from pursuing the topic. Haesung quietly states it is personal, while Subi wonders why Soonbin is acting like his protective manager. With a firm wave of his hand, Soonbin tells the girls to stop asking about Haesung's family altogether. A sudden halt hits the conversation, creating a heavy and awkward silence throughout the dimly lit karaoke booth. Trying to break the tension, the glasses-wearing boy nervously announces that Solby Lee is the next singer. The karaoke screen glows as it prepares to play Sulby's favorite song, much to the excitement of the group. Determined to impress Haesung with her talent, Solby stands before the screen and prepares to give her best performance. Haesung abruptly announces his departure from the karaoke room while the pink-haired Silby continues her energetic performance. A clack sound echoes as the door closes, leaving Solby and the black-haired Yoonsol alone in the glowing booth. Outside, Soonbin catches up to Haesung, frantically explaining that Silby didn't mean to bring up his painful family situation. Haesung admits he is angry at Soonbin. Catching his friend, Haesung questions why Soonbin constantly interferes. Desperate to justify his actions, Soonbin reveals that his own family is also complicated and he was only helping. Haesung explains that he views himself as part of a normal family. A choke sound follows as shouting with frustration, Soonbin insists his interference was strictly for Haesung's sake, hurt by the boy's cold lack of understanding. Later that night, Soonbin sits on a bench with the glasses-wearing Jaejong, wallowing in regret over his handled situation. A scratch sound accompanies Soonbin's frustration as he admits to being childish for getting angry during their heated exchange. Jaejong advises Soonbin to apologize to both Haesung and Solby tomorrow to fix the mess his overprotection created. Back at home, Haesung stands alone in the quiet bathroom, his expression clouded by the heavy thoughts of the day. The mermaid Yoonhae suddenly appears in the bathtub behind him, gently noting the many things they both have in common. Yoonhae offers a sincere apology, admitting that her previous cowardice was born from the pure terror she felt inside. Sitting on the edge of the tub, Yoonhae reveals the tragic truth that she has been orphaned since her birth. Yoonhae reaches out to touch Haesung's arm, promising to be a supportive friend he can lean on during his troubles. Haesung scratches his head, confessing he feels out of place with his friends and hates his own internal confusion. Collapsing onto the floor with his head in his hands, Hae-seong asks Yoonhae if she shared these same lonely feelings. Resting her head on the tub, Yoonhae reassures him that his friend likely didn't mean any harm with his words. Yoonhae places a comforting hand on his shoulder, explaining that others simply cannot understand the unique trauma they endured. A dark vision depicts Hae-seong standing apart from his friends, emphasizing his fear of being labeled. Hae-seong insists his friends aren't judgmental, leading Yoonhae to conclude she must have just been surrounded by bad people. Hae-seong offers a quiet apology to Yoonhae, though the mermaid looks up at him with curious and questioning eyes. Turning away, Hae-seong admits he finally understands the point she was trying to make about their shared isolation. A wave of guilt washes over Hae-seong as he wonders if he feels this way because he once left her. Yoonhae urges Hae-seong to look inside the water, inviting him to see something beyond the confines of the tub. Hesitantly, Hae-seong leans over the edge of the bathtub to peer into the clear and tranquil water below him. Hae-seong submerges his face into the water, opening his eyes to a world filled with rising bubbles. An underwater vista reveals smooth stones and tiny fish darting through the shimmering, clear depths of the hidden realm. A splash sounds as Hae-seong pulls back with a wet cough, surprised by the sudden and vivid underwater experience. Gasping for air, Hae-seong asks if he just saw the ocean, while Yoonhae confirms the water is more than it seems. Yoonhae smiles serenely, confirming that the bathtub contains a portal to the beautiful and familiar Mole Island ocean. Reaching out a hand, Yoonhae invites Hae-seong to fully submerge and take a closer look at her home. Hae-seong swims deep into the azure depths, following Yoonhae as she gracefully leads him through the vast underwater world. Floating weightlessly together, the boy and the mermaid hold hands as they drift through the peaceful, sunlit blue waters. In a tender moment, Yoonhae promises that this hidden place and her feelings for him will never change. Underwater stares at Yoonhae with wide-eyed wonder, completely mesmerized by the magical reality she has shown him. Yoonhae suddenly swims toward the light above as Hae-seong reaches out, desperately begging her not to leave him behind. A wet cough sounds as Hae-seong finds himself being forcibly held underwater in the bathtub by a stern-faced Yoonhae. A terrifying memory flashes as Hae-seong realizes the mermaid once drowned a man, and he fears he is next. Panic fills Hae-seong's eyes as he begs Yoonhae to let him out, terrified by the sudden and violent shift. Yoonhae looks down with a cold, haunting gaze, asking if he will give her the thing she has always wanted. Looming over him in the tub, Yoonhae's expression remains unreadable as she closes the distance between their trembling faces. The mermaid leans down and presses her lips to Hae-seong's, kissing the boy while he remains submerged and helpless. A wide shot of the bathroom reveals the eerie scene of the boy and the mermaid entwined within the tub. A soft touch sounds as Yoonhae cradles Hae-seong's wet face, her eyes filled with a strange and unsettling affection. Looking deeply into his eyes, Yoonhae asks if the experience was okay, her voice carrying an air of satisfaction. Hae-seong remains motionless in the water, his expression slowly morphing into a faint and unnerving smile of acceptance. Standing in the kitchen at night, Hae-seong stares at his phone, finding the supernatural encounter to be deeply creepy. Hae-seong touches his lips in distress, feeling deeply creeped out by the supernatural kiss he shared with Yoonhae. Fearing he might provoke her, Hae-seong decides to avoid filling the bathtub again for the following day. A sudden slip leads to a loud thump as Hae-seong drops a water pitcher, startled by an unseen presence. Yoonhae stares up from the water with intense, haunting gaze, asking if he will return to her tomorrow. A swirl sound accompanies Yoonhae's sudden disappearance, leaving only a pool of water on the kitchen floor. Hyesong experiences a noticeable wobble as he leans against the table, physically shaken by the mermaid's lingering influence. A visible tremble shakes Hyesung as he realizes with growing dread that Yoonhae has become even more deranged. Soonbin dreads making an awkward apology while his friends aggressively shout for him to just say he's sorry. Hyesung reflects on Yoonhae's warnings about his friend's lack of understanding while the mermaid's image looms behind him. Soonbin tentatively asks if Hyesung is okay, and the black-haired boy surprises him with a polite, quiet thanks. The group of friends bursts into the hallway, loudly and playfully asking if the two boys finally made up. Annoyed by the loud interruption, Hyesung asks Selby to talk outside while the group continues their boisterous laughter. The four friends look on with shocked and speechless expressions after an unexpected revelation stops their teasing entirely. A sparkle surrounds the pink-haired Solbi as she excitedly agrees to Hyesong's request for a private conversation. Standing by the school sinks, Hyesong worries about his normal life while fearing Yoonhae's unpredictable and dangerous reactions. Hyesong tells Solbi that he must protect himself, his expression shadowed by the heavy weight of his secret. Looking awkward and hesitant, Hyesong struggles to find the right words to ask the pink-haired girl for help. Solbi smiles warmly and encourages him to go ahead, her eyes filled with gentle curiosity and kindness. Hyesung asks Solbi for old clothes, explaining that his sister has outgrown her wardrobe and he lacks money. Seulbi looks surprised as Hyesung continues to explain his desperate financial situation regarding his younger sister's needs. Seulbi appears glum and quiet, while Hyesung quickly apologizes for the sudden and personal nature of his request. Back at home, Seulbi's friends question why she would give away her own necessary clothes to the boy. The friends suspect Hyesung of leading her on, but Seulbi prepares to silence their assumptions with a shout. A loud slam echoes through the room as Seulbi insists there is more to the story, startling her friends. A heaped bag of clothes causes Hyesung to gasp as he struggles to hold the massive, generous donation. Hyesung expresses deep gratitude, wondering how he could ever repay Seulbi for providing such a significant amount of clothing. A sudden jolt hits Hyesung as Seulbi points a finger at him, announcing a single, non-negotiable condition. Selby demands that Hyesung join their group beach trip this summer, using the clothes as leverage for his attendance. A squee of delight follows as Seulbi's friends celebrate her successful plan to get closer to her school crush. The girls playfully squabble on the bed, already jokingly imagining a future wedding between Seulbi and the black-haired boy. Inside the tub, Yoonhae admires her new white dress and asks for Hyesung's honest opinion on her appearance. Hyesung offers a quiet compliment, telling Yoonhae the dress looks good while keeping a nervous distance from the tub. Hyesung realizes he must humor the mermaid to keep her in a good mood and prevent further controlling behavior. Hyesung wonders if Yoonhae suspects the truth about the dress as he stares away from her with nervous eyes. Yoonhae invites Hyesung back into the water to see the ocean, but the boy remains hesitant and still. Hyesung flinches as Yoonhae confronts him, pointing out a sharp contradiction in what he told the other girl earlier. Yoonhae's intense gaze fixates on Hyesung as she reveals she overheard his entire conversation about the upcoming beach trip. A flashback depicts the pink-haired Seulbi excitedly inviting Hyesung to the beach during their private school meeting. Hyesung's eyes widen in terror as he realizes the mermaid has been watching his every move, even at school. Through several panels, Yoonhae explains that water is everywhere, her presence haunting every moment of Hyesung's daily life. Yoonhae grips Hyesung's face, menacingly ordering him to enter the water immediately as punishment for his perceived deception. Hyesung realizes the terrifying truth of his new reality as Yoonhae pulls him down into the light-filled depths. Hyesung accepts his forced obedience to Yoonhae, despairing over the impossibility of ever returning to his former life. A splash sounds as Hyesung resurfaces, coughing and gasping for air while Yoonhae watches him with cold detachment. Yoon-hae stares at the struggling boy with hollow eyes, listening to his desperate, wet gasps for breath. Hye-sung huffs with exhaustion, leaning his weight against the side of the tub as he slowly recovers. Staring at the wet clothes on the floor, Hye-sung despairingly concludes he is completely at the mermaid's mercy. Hye-sung enters the bathroom and angrily shouts at his sister for drawing a bath despite his clear warnings. The young girl looks up with teary eyes, explaining that the water was only for her science homework assignment. Looming over his sister with frustration, Hye-sung shouts at her for not listening to his strict and necessary rules. A woman in a white uniform points at Hye-sung, noting he forgot his name tag and will receive demerit points. Hye-sung touches his chest in confusion as his friend asks if he was unaware of today's name tag inspection. Back in the classroom, Hye-sung sits at his desk and decides to make a list to organize his thoughts. Hye-seong reflects on the mandatory afternoon meetings Yoon-hae demands by the bathtub, fearing her anger if he's late. Notes on a paper highlight the terrifying realization that Yoon-hae can emerge from any sufficiently large water source. A sudden shatter sound causes Hye-sung to jolt in fear as he recalls Yoon-hae's claim about limited water access. A murmur sounds as a girl in glasses accidentally drops her water bottle, startling everyone in the classroom. Students discuss the lack of paper towels as a spill spreads across the floor, suggesting someone check the washroom. A quick raise sounds as Hye-sung reaches out to offer the girl his pocket of tissues for the mess. Hye-sung tells the grateful girl to hurry and clean it, his expression showing a mix of stress and urgency. Hye-seong sits at his desk with his hand over his face, overwhelmed as his classmates continue cleaning the spill. Hye-sung reflects on his exhaustion, admitting he hates being constantly terrified by every simple instance of spilled water. Grabbing his hair in frustration, Hye-sung panics, fearing his friends will think he is losing his mind. A haunting image of Yoon-hae appears, her pale face and long black hair accompanied by an ominous, recurring promise. The scene shifts to a sunny day as Hye-sung's brown-haired friend looks out the car window at the ocean. Hye-sung's friends are excited about the beach, but the black-haired boy remains silent and shadowed in the backseat. A stinky smell greets the group as they enter their cheap ocean view rental room, complaining about the poor quality. Soonbin explains the difficulty of renting a room for minors, while Silbi and the others try to stay positive. From the balcony, Hye-sung watches his friends playing on the beach while he remains isolated and hesitant inside. In a dark memory, Yoon-hae cradles Hye-sung's face, telling him he must visit her when no one else is around. Yoon-hae's cold, intense gaze lingers as she reminds Hye-sung that he has no other choice but to obey her. Standing by the balcony door, Hye-sung is paralyzed by the terrifying thought of Yoon-hae appearing in the open ocean. Hye-seong drinks from a water bottle, but his mind is clearly elsewhere as he reflects on his dire situation. Hye-sung stares into the darkness, concluding that the only way to truly escape his nightmare is to make Yoon-hae disappear. At the beach, Hye-sung's friends wonder why he stayed in the room all day, while Sulbi looks particularly dejected. The group returns to the building at sunset, calling out to Hye-sung to check if he is finally feeling okay. Hye-sung greets his friends at the door, apologizing for missing out while they show off the dinner they bought. As Hye-sung helps set the table, his friends discuss the logistics of having a meal for their group of 6. A creak sound accompanies the opening of a bottle, while a friend complains about the lack of nearby entertainment. Hye-sung looks surprised as he asks how they managed to buy alcohol, his expression filled with genuine confusion. The group gathers around the table for food and drinks, discussing their lack of options in the remote area. Sulbi offers Hae-sung a drink, but the boy quickly holds up a hand and politely declines the offer. A tense atmosphere develops as the brown-haired boy questions Hye-sung's behavior while the others try to keep peace. Feeling like the villain, the brown-haired boy complains about Hye-sung's lack of participation during their rare trip together. The group laughs as a flushed Hyesung sits on the floor, seemingly having succumbed to the social pressure. Hyesung covers his face in embarrassment, unable to believe his friends are seeing him in such a vulnerable state. A blurry, dark memory shows Hyesung cowering while a woman in a purple dress looms over him in distress. A red-haired woman with a distorted, angry face screams in a traumatic flashback, her eyes wide with desperate fury. A sudden tap-tap sounds as Hyesung tries to clear his head while the group discusses high school plans. The brown-haired boy mentions various school choices, wondering if the girls will attend an all-girls high school nearby. The friends debate their futures, mentioning beauty schools and co-op programs while the conversation flows around the table. Sylvie and another friend tease the brown-haired boy about his academic laziness while Hyesung listens quietly in the background. Hyesung reflects on his friend's dreams for the future, feeling isolated by his own secret and burdened by expectations. Hyesung explains his plan to go to a local school to care for his sister, despite his friend's protests. A muffled sounds as a friend stops the brown-haired boy from saying something insensitive about Hyesung's situation. A heavy silence falls over the group after Hyesung bluntly reveals that he does not have parents to help. A sniffle sounds as Solbi begins to cry, making Hyesung feel awkward for bringing up his tragic family reality. Hyesung elaborates on his financial struggles, explaining how he had to give up his phone to save money for essentials. The scene pulls back to show the lonely, lit balcony of their rental room against the vast and silent night. A sinister close-up of Yoonhae's smile appears, her chilling words about his lack of choice echoing through his mind. Hyesung wakes up in a cold sweat, his face pale with lingering fear from a terrifying nightmare. Jolting awake on his futon, the black-haired boy panics upon realizing he unintentionally fell asleep during the night. Steeled with desperate resolve, Hyesung grips a sharp kitchen knife while standing alone in the dimly lit hallway. A tranquil swa sound fills the air as Hyesung watches the sunrise, desperately trying to reassure himself. Hyesung stands alone by the water, his hood up as he prepares for a final, terrifying confrontation. A loud splash accompanies Soonbin's sudden shout as he orders Hyesung to stop and stay back immediately. Soonbin's expression is one of pure fury and deep concern as he catches up to his troubled friend. Seizing Hyesung by the jacket, a frantic shake punctuates Soonbin's terrified accusation about his friend's perceived suicidal intentions. Hyesung stares back in shock as Soonbin berates him for trying to abandon their group of friends so tragically. A heavy splash sounds as Soonbin continues to scream, completely unaware of the knife Hyesung is hiding. Hyesung urgently begs Soonbin to leave the water, terrified of the danger lurking just beneath the gentle waves. The argument is cut short as the mermaid Yoonhae silently rises from the ocean, watching them both intently. Hyesung and Soonbin freeze in absolute terror as they realize they are no longer alone in the water. Yoonhae's beautiful yet cold features remain impassive as she stares at the two boys intruding on her space. Yoonhae questions why Hyesung brought another person, noting her expectation that he would come to her alone. Panic grips Hyesung as he realizes his plan to make Yoonhae disappear has failed before it even started. Beneath the surface of the clear blue water, the long, shimmering scales of Yoonhae's mermaid tail are revealed. A sharp splash and a confused "huh" sound from Soonbin as he notices the strange ripples near Yoonhae. Terror washes over Soonbin as he realizes Yoonhae has no legs, while Hyesung desperately tries to shield him. Hyesung lets out a desperate yell for Soonbin to run, but Yoonhae continues to speak with unsettling calm. Yoonhae leans in close, whispering ominously about the many dark secrets she and the black-haired boy share. Unable to listen anymore, Hyesung shouts for her to stop, his face contorted with emotional and physical exhaustion. Hyesong makes a sudden grab for Yoonhae, attempting to silence her and take control of the terrifying situation. Clamping a hand over Yoonhae's mouth, Hyesong ignores her muffled question about why he is hurting her. Hyesong's voice breaks as he asks why she keeps ruining his life and getting him into deep trouble. Soonbin remains paralyzed in the shallow water, listening to Hyesong claim they are both equally precious to him. Yoonhae reaches out to touch Hyesong's face, complaining that he treats her like any other ordinary human child. Pulling him closer, Yoonhae demands that the black-haired boy recognize just how special she truly is to him. Hyesong weeps, promising to try and understand, but Yoonhae dismisses his words as a desperate, unbelievable lie. Yoonhae's gaze sharpens as she points out that Hyesong clearly brought a sharp weapon to their secret meeting. Taking the knife from his hand, Yoonhae holds the sharp blade dangerously close to Hyesong's trembling face. A startled splash and a sharp "huh" sound as Yoonhae effortlessly turns Hyesong's own weapon against him. Yoonhae watches him with eerie curiosity, asking the black-haired boy if he is finally starting to feel scared. Stuttering, Hyesong claims he only brought the knife for self-defense and would never actually dream of harming her. Yoonhae notes with a hollow, disappointed look that the knife was likely meant to protect Soonbin from her. Reminding him of their past on Mulay Island, Yoonhae points out how much Hyesong's protective nature has changed. Yoonhae's face remains clouded with displeasure as she confesses her deep hatred for both the situation and Soonbin. Falling to his knees with a splash, Hyesong begs for forgiveness, claiming he simply became confused and panicked. As night falls over the shore, Hyesong begs Yoonhae to spare Soonbin and let his friend go home. Yoonhae takes Hyesong's hands in hers, promising to grant his every wish if he remains obedient to her. A warm memory of their childhood on the island depicts a happier time when they were just friends. Hyesong agrees to follow her, but Yoonhae notes he still hasn't offered the one thing she truly desires. With a gentle touch, Yoonhae suggests they finish their private conversation after Soonbin has finally left the water. A heavy splash and stagger sound as Hyesong begins leading his stunned friend back toward the dry beach. Helping Soonbin to his feet within rise, Hyesong urges him to get up so they can leave. Hyesong tells Soonbin to stay silent and just keep moving, ignoring his friend's frantic questions about his well-being. Yoonhae remains in the water, her long black hair floating around her as she watches them walk away. A brief memory shows Hyesong pleading with Yoonhae in the bathtub, begging her to find happiness elsewhere. Reaching the safety of the shore, Hyesong looks back at the darkening ocean and whispers Yoonhae's name. An sound and a final splash echo as Soonbin runs away, terrified by his glimpse of the mermaid. Soonbin trembles and screams that something is pulling him down while Hyesong watches from the shallow water in shock. Panicking, Hyesong reaches into the water and tries to grab his friend's arm before he is dragged further away. Beneath the surface, Yoonhae's pale hands pull Soonbin down as Hyesong realizes she won't budge from the deep spot. Hyesong shouts at Yoonhae to let go, desperately pleading that Soonbin has nothing to do with their dark situation. Gritting his teeth in a display of sheer desperation, Hyesong vows that he cannot lose his only true friend. A sudden grab sounds as Hyesong retrieves a large stone, screaming for Yoonhae to release Soonbin immediately. With a loud whack, Hyesong strikes the arm holding his friend underwater, hoping to force the mermaid to let go. A heavy wham echoes underwater as the blow lands on the mermaid, revealing Yoonhae's long, shimmering tail beneath her dress. Another whack sounds as Yoonhae stares up from the depths. Her expression remains chillingly blank despite the violent physical strike. A sickening squeeze and crack sound as Soonbin lets out a pained jolt, his wrist breaking under Yoonhae's immense strength. Soonbin gasps and pants in agony, crying out about his broken wrist while a terrified Hyesong watches him drop. A loud whoosh and splash accompany Soonbin's final cry as the waves sweep his struggling body away into the deep. Haeseong stands frozen in the rising tide, tears streaming down his face as he watches his friend disappear into the ocean. Yoonhae touches Haesong's face with her wet hand, coldly explaining that Soonbin has been sent to the deep ocean. Yoonhae stares intently at the black-haired boy, asking if he has anything else to say now that they are alone. Cradling his face, Yoonhae listens as a weeping Hye-sung promises to follow her to Mule Island to end the nightmare. Yoonhae dismisses his offer with a look of disappointment, telling the boy that his promise is not what she desires. Embracing him tightly in the surf, Yoonhae tells Haesong how happy she is that he is finally acting like a friend. Underwater, a drowning Soonbin is forced to try again, repeating a desperate promise to stay together with her forever. Yoonhae smiles radiantly as she hugs the boy, encouraging him to keep going until he says exactly what she wants. The scene shifts to a police station where a detective prepares to question Hae-song alone, with a guardian's permission. In a cold interrogation room, the detective types as he reminds the boy that minors cannot legally use paid accommodations. A wet splot sounds from Hae-song's soaked shoes as he explains that Soonbin followed him to the beach that night. Wincing in pain, Hae-song struggles through a slosh of traumatic memories, unable to clearly recall the details of the incident. A sharp crack sounds as Hae-sung envisions the drowning boy, the memory of the struggle haunting his fractured mental state. Jolting back with a crash, a terrified Hae-sung panics when the ghost of Soonbin seems to call out his name. Clenching his chest while huffing, Hae-sung breaks down in tears, repeatedly claiming that he simply cannot remember anything at all. A woman identifies as a mother, pleading with the detective not to let this investigation ruin her son's art career. The woman continues her rant, claiming her son is innocent and that Hae-song is a bad influence without parents. With a sudden yell and whack, the woman hits her son, Jae-jong, blaming him for wasting money on art lessons. The detective tries to calm the mother, explaining that Jae-jong isn't a suspect in his friend's tragic and sudden disappearance. Turning his attention to the boy with glasses, the detective asks Jae-jong how Hye-seong and Soonbin really got along. Jae-jong explains how thoughtful Soonbin was, while the detective's typing creates a steady tap-tap sound in the quiet room. A warm memory shows Hae-sung and Soonbin laughing together, reinforcing Jae-jong's belief that his friend could never be a killer. The detective probes about their drinking, causing Jae-jong to flinch as his mother hears that the boys had been consuming alcohol. Jae-jong visits the black-haired boy, asking why he came, while mentioning their teacher told him where Hae-sung was staying. Hae-sung asks if it is truly okay for him to be there, while the boy with glasses insists he should attend. With a gentle shake, Jae-jong warns that running away will only convince everyone, including himself, that Hye-sung is actually guilty. A faint weep sounds as Jae-jong enters a funeral hall, standing before rows of flowers in a somber, silent corridor. Jae-jong finds Hae-sung standing outside the room and urges him to finally go inside to pay his last respects. Hae-sung stands before the memorial with a solemn nod, the flowers behind him marking the tragic end of a friendship. A digital monitor displays the name of the deceased, Soonbin Gwan, confirming the grim reality of the boy's watery death. Jae-jong announces Hae-sung's arrival to the grieving group standing at the entrance of the memorial service for their friend. A woman in black mourning clothes stares at the boy with wide, tear-filled eyes, her face contorted with deep grief. An older man with glasses grabs the woman, welcoming Hae-seong and urging him to say a final goodbye to Soonbin. The man tells his wife to stay silent as Hae-sung kneels before the altar, facing the portrait of his friend. Hae-sung bows his head in silent prayer, the weight of his secret and his loss evident in his somber, still posture. A sudden splash sounds as water begins to pool around Hayoung's knees while he remains in a deep, respectful bow. Drip sounds echo through the room as a wet, ghostly figure stands over Haesung, bringing the sea into the funeral. A soft murmur fills a classroom where students prepare for a performance, unaware of the horror haunting their traumatized classmate. Brown-haired Soonbin asks Haesung about his looks, while the black-haired boy responds dismissively to his energetic friend. A teacher calls for Soonbin Guan, who excitedly buttons his blazer and responds with a loud, cheerful shout. Soonbin poses for his school photo as a photographer gives directions, while Haesung watches quietly from the background. A memorial portrait shows a smiling Soonbin Guan in his uniform, resting amidst a bed of yellow lilies. Haesung stares into space with wide, hollow eyes, the memory of his friend's portrait burned into his mind. Inside the funeral hall, Haesung, Jae-jung, and the grieving family perform a deep, respectful bow together in silence. A woman in mourning clothes hesitates as she approaches the black-haired boy, her face clouded with deep suspicion. Soonbin's mother grips Haesung's arm, desperately pleading for him to confirm that her son's death was just an accident. The grieving father tries to stop his wife, questioning why she is bringing up such painful and accusatory topics. With a frantic shake, the woman clings to Haesung, begging him to look at her and speak the truth. She reminds the weeping boy of their close bond, recalling how he often visited their home for family dinners. The father lets out a yell and pulls his sobbing wife away as the guests watch the tragic scene. A blonde woman named Yubin calls out to the two boys, her face etched with exhaustion and profound sorrow. Yubin stands alone in the quiet hall, her gaze fixed downward as she prepares to discard a used item. Haesung and Jae-jung stand in awkward, somber silence, the weight of the girl's grief hanging heavily between them. A quick tap-tap sounds as Yubin drops something, explaining that her family has been shattered by the tragedy. Looking teary and broken, Yubin confesses her inability to process her brother's sudden disappearance while her eyes glisten. The two boys remain silent and still, unable to offer any comfort to the grieving girl standing before them. A sudden reach and a hesitate sound as Yubin touches Haesung, causing the black-haired boy to flinch in surprise. With a heavy hug, Yubin pulls Haesung close, seeking some form of solace from her brother's best friend. Embracing him, Yubin whispers her desperate hope that it was an accident, knowing how much Soonbin valued him. A brief memory shows Soonbin, Haesung, and Jae-jung laughing together, a painful reminder of happier, simpler times. Still clinging to the black-haired boy, Yubin begs him for the truth, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Yubin's grip tightens as she begs Haesung never to step foot in their house or see them again. A teary drop falls as she tells him to leave quietly today, wishing to end their connection forever. Haesung stands frozen as Yubin declares that it would be better for both of them to stay apart. A drop-drop sound of rain accompanies Jae-jung's question as Haesung begins walking away into the darkening night. A tap sounds as Jae-jung mentions their arriving classmates, but a distracted Haesung keeps his back turned. Insisting he must go home immediately, Haesung leaves his confused friend standing alone in the steady, cold rain. A frantic mumble escapes the black-haired boy as his vision warps into dark, watery shapes, signaling a mental break. With a sudden rush, Haesung sprints away into the storm, fleeing the unbearable guilt and the funeral hall. Seen from above, Haesung runs across a green crosswalk, his frantic footsteps echoing through the empty, wet street. Watery memories of Soonbin's drowning collide with Yoonhae's voice, promising she won't see Haesung for a while. The mermaid stands in the moonlit ocean, her face beautiful yet terrifying as she mentions his past sins. A loud swaa of rain accompanies Hyesung's pause and slow raise of his head in the empty street. Rainwater streams down Hyesung's face as he clutches his head, his expression twisted into a silent, agonizing scream. A pale, ghostly hand reaches from the darkness to cradle his face, the touch cold and impossibly long-fingered. Hyesung looks up in terror, noticing the bare feet of a figure standing before him in the rain. The black-haired boy stands in the downpour, his eyes glazed and hollow as the world blurs around him. With a heavy stagger, Hyesung enters his home, startling a young girl who asks if he is okay. Looking haunted, Hyesung orders the small girl to leave the house and stay out for 3 hours. Inside the bathroom, the mermaid Yoonhae waits in the water, her long black hair floating like seagrass. Hyesung lunges into a desperate hug, his clothes soaking as he clings to the mermaid in the bathtub. Pressing his face against hers, the black-haired boy weeps and whispers that he has missed her terribly. Hyesung confesses she is all he has, begging Yoonhae to take him back to their childhood on Malay Island. Yoonhae welcomes him back with a chilling smile before they both sink deep into the dark blue ocean. A close-up of the mermaid's eyes accompanies a final, haunting claim that the guilty do not deserve life. Underwater visions of his weeping friends appear as a final, desperate apology to everyone echoes through the sea. The scene fades as Soonbin's mother collapses at the memorial, her grief consumed by the vast, indifferent ocean. Rain falls as Haebin waits at a bus stop, stealing her resolve for what she must do next. Hyesung and Yoonhae sit peacefully in the shallow ocean waves, their backs turned to the rocky shore. A gentle swish and splash sound as Hyesung admires the unchanging beauty of their peaceful surroundings. Amidst a soft swaa of rain, Hyesung plans to stay the summer and regrets not returning sooner. Hyesung thanks Yoonhae for the happy childhood memories while they hold hands in the shimmering water. A firm hug sounds as Hyesung embraces Yoonhae, promising to pack his bags and return to her. A faint tremble is felt as Yoonhae agrees to his plan, while Hyesung holds her close in silence. Haebin enters the quiet house, calling out for her brother to see if he has returned home. Finding a note on the table, Haebin learns Hyesung is leaving and must not drain the bathtub. Haebin stares at the letter with a worried expression, struggling to process her brother's strange and sudden departure. Hyesung sits on the porch of a traditional house, expressing his long-held desire to see Yoonhae's home. As water spills from a bottle, Hyesung confesses that his only clear childhood memories are of his friend. A dark, scratched-out memory of a family photo appears, reflecting Hyesung's fractured and painful past. Hyesung looks at Yoonhae with a soft, appreciative gaze, finding comfort in her presence at last. The image of Yoonhae's wet dress clinging to her form highlights the watery nature of their shared existence. Yoonhae gazes back at the black-haired boy, her expression filled with a quiet and knowing affection. With a gentle touch to his cheek, Yoonhae smiles at Hyesung, bridging the gap between their worlds. Hyesung's face is bathed in a warm, ethereal light as he experiences a moment of genuine happiness. The two stand together in the vast, sparkling ocean, united by their bond and their shared isolation. Diving deep into the blue water, the mermaid Yoonhae swims gracefully alongside her companion. Hyesung floats weightlessly underwater, surrendered to the current and the tranquility of the deep sea. Yoonhae cradles the black-haired boy beneath the waves, her long hair billowing around them like dark seaweed. The pair shares a peaceful embrace underwater, momentarily safe from the world above the surface. Back in the dim room, Hyesung lies on the floor, while Yoonhae sits in a pool of water. Yoonhae looks downcast as she recalls the deep pain she felt when Hyesung originally left her behind. Hyesung listens with a heavy heart, his gaze fixed on nothing as he reflects on his past choices. A vision of mermaid Yoonhae holding seashells appears, a reminder of her true and ancient nature. A plop and splash sound as Hyesung hugs Yoonhae, desperately apologizing for the pain he caused her. Yoonhae claims his city friends never treated him right, deepening the divide between Hyesung and his human life. Clinging to Yoonhae, Hyesung wonders if their lives would be different if he had stayed by her side. A tight hug sounds as Yoonhae admits her own greed ruined everything, while they embrace in the shadows. Yoonhae finds solace in the hug, her face showing a mix of love and lingering sadness. A blank sound accompanies Hyesung's hollow gaze, his mental state appearing increasingly fragile and detached. A soft rub sounds as Hyesung claims he is fine, despite Yoonhae's concern about his dizzy state. Yoonhae expresses deep worry over his weight loss and lack of appetite since his return to her. A faint sway accompanies Hyesung's explanation that his stomach rejects food after so much time in water. Yoonhae surprises the black-haired boy by suggesting they finally return together to his life and soul. Hyesung looks at her in disbelief, having assumed she hated him being away from the island. A splash sounds as Yoonhae explains she would hate seeing him become sick more than she hates Seoul. Embracing her, Hyesung is deeply moved by Yoonhae's unexpected thoughtfulness and her care for his well-being. A teary sound escapes Haebin as she finds her brother sleeping and calls his name in relief. With a gentle shake, Haebin tries to wake him, questioning where he has been and if he's okay. Hyesung dismissively tells his sister not to wake him, his eyes staying shut in exhaustion. Haebin breaks into tears, her heart heavy with worry for her brother's obviously deteriorating condition. Hyesung remains curled up in bed, seemingly seeking refuge in sleep from his traumatic reality. In the bathroom, Hyesung tells Yoonhae that the rainy season will keep the downpour constant outside. Yoonhae expresses a desire to leave the bathtub and try something different despite their aquatic bond. A loud swaa of rain falls as Hyesung crouches outside with an umbrella, watching over Yoonhae. Hyesung admits he no longer has any interest in school, fearing the judgmental stares of his classmates. A soft lean sounds as Hyesung asks Yoonhae if he should simply live with her on Mole Island. As they lock eyes, the black-haired boy questions why she is there, but Yoonhae promises they will stay together forever. Drenched in the rain, the long-haired mermaid advises him to talk things through before making any permanent life decisions. Hyesung is startled by a sudden voice calling his name, looking back to see Solbi standing under her umbrella. Approaching the crouched boy, Solbi asks why he is out in the storm, unaware of the companion he sees. Looking up with a weary gaze, Hyesung dismisses her concern, claiming he simply dropped something and is leaving now. A vision of the mermaid appears in the water, as Soyolbi mentions everyone at school has been worried about him. Standing in the downpour, Hyesung coldly rejects her concern, insisting he is far too busy to talk to anyone. With a sudden rush, Solbi stops him to explain that seeing a therapist has been helping her process the trauma. As they walk, a rhythmic step-step sounds while Solbi explains that sharing sadness with others helps the healing process. A heavy drop sounds as Solbi suggests a group meeting, while Hyesung stares at Yoonhae's reflection in the wet ground. His tone turning sharp, Hyesung asks if she truly believes their experiences with the tragedy are in any way comparable. Letting out a tired sigh, the black-haired boy covers his face, finding the girl's attempts at empathy completely absurd and frustrating. Hyesung glares at the pink-haired girl, calling her a fool for not knowing when to keep her mouth shut. Overwhelmed with bitterness, he calls her insensitive for offering advice when she slept through the actual moment of the tragedy. In a low voice, Hyesung claims the entire accident happened because of the pressure to go on the trip. He accuses her of bragging about her therapy, while he feels his entire vacation was wasted humoring his classmates. Tears stream down Solby's face as she realizes she crossed a line and apologizes for making him feel so uncomfortable. Leaving her umbrella behind, Solby walks away crying, leaving Haesong standing alone on the cold, wet school steps. Yoonhae watches the girl depart from the water, noting how deeply hurt Solby appears to be by his harsh words. A quick turn sounds as Haesong looks back at the mermaid, standing isolated in the center of the flooded courtyard. Looking up with a smile, Yoonhae expresses her happiness at his care, promising to wait until he is an adult. With a gentle look, the mermaid encourages him to return to school and continue his life for a while longer. Back in the bathroom, Yoonhae notices his excitement, while Haeseong watches her tail shimmering beneath the surface of the water. A sudden beep-beep sounds, causing Haesong to freeze as the mermaid reaches out from the tub to grab him. Hearing another beep, Haeseong tells Yoonhae to wait, wondering if his uncle has suddenly returned to the house. With a loud burst and thud, the black-haired boy throws open the door, rushing into the hallway to investigate the noise. A click and beep sound as Jaejong enters the apartment, telling a shocked Haesong that they need to speak immediately. Haesong demands to know how his friend got the passcode, while Jaejong asks what he said to make Solby so miserable. Jaejong urges him to apologize, but an annoyed Haeseong snaps that he was never actually close to any of them. Looking heartbroken, the brown-haired boy asks if he is expected to just watch his best friend suffer in silence. A heavy da-dun sound accompanies Haesung's cold declaration that Jaejong means absolutely nothing to him anymore. Distraught by the rejection, Jaejong wonders how he could be so cruel, while Haesung demands to be left alone. Jaejong stares at him in silence, his expression hardening as he looks at the person his friend has become. Jaejong reveals he lied to the police about Haesung's fight with Soonbin, admitting he only did it because of trust. Looking regretful, the boy with glasses admits he now wonders what truly happened on the day of the drowning accident. With a pained choke, Jaejong calls him a jackass before a loud slam sounds as he exits the apartment. A soft creak sounds as Haesong returns to the bathroom, asking Yoonhae if she heard the entire heated argument. Resting her head on the edge of the tub, the long-haired mermaid sighs and calls the departing boy very mean. A slow trudge sounds as a dejected Jaejong walks down the stairs, weighed down by his friend's betrayal. Jaejong pauses for a moment of quiet reflection, deeply suspicious that something dark happened between his two best friends. Leaving the building with a creak and pause, Jaejong finds Hyebin waiting for him on the concrete steps outside. Looking up with hope, the pinkish brown-haired girl asks if he was able to have a successful talk with her brother. Looking down in shame, Jaejong apologizes to Hyebin, confessing that there is nothing more he can do to help. Hyebin asks if he is truly giving up on him, while Jaejong admits he is no longer sure of anything. After a moment of hesitation, the brown-haired boy asks Hyebin if she still has her cell phone with her. Hyebin watches in silence as a heavy trudge sounds from Jaejong, who walks away into the distance without another word. The scene shifts to the imposing exterior of the school building, standing quiet under the bright morning sunlight. Entering the classroom, Haesong is met with the heavy, judgmental silence of his classmates as they stare at him. A soft rustle and zip sound as Haesong sits down, ignoring the dark, shadowy gazes of everyone in the room. A sudden tap sounds as a hand rests on his shoulder, and a familiar voice greets Haesong from behind. Jaejong invites Haesong to lunch, offering to pay, while a soft creak sounds as Haesong departs, leaving Jae-jung behind while classmates whisper about their apparent fight. A sudden pause occurs as Hye-sung encounters Seulbi and her friends, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere in the hallway. Seulbi softly greets him, but the black-haired boy walks past her and the other girls without saying a word. Seulbi's friends criticize Hye-sung's rudeness, noting that he isn't the only one suffering from the recent tragedy. Jae-jung looks at the flowers on an empty desk as a teacher's voice calls the classroom to order. The teacher calls out Hye-sung Gum's name while the rest of the students sit quietly in their desks. At home, Haibin argues with Hye-sung, refusing to leave the apartment just because he wants to be alone. Haibin explains her fear, mentioning how Hye-sung has changed since their mother's funeral and limits her bathroom access. A sharp yank sounds as Hye-sung grabs Haibin's arm, startling the young girl in their dimly lit living room. With a forceful push, Hye-sung shoves his sister out of the room, leaving her crying in pain and confusion. Looking weary, Hye-sung coldly tells her nothing is wrong and orders her to stay away for 4 hours. Teary and heartbroken, Haibin slaps her own cheeks, deciding she must give her brother the space he needs. Haibin runs down the stairs, resolving to stop crying and support the brother who has raised her alone. The scene shifts to the bright, modern exterior of a Starbucks coffee shop standing under the afternoon sun. Inside the cafe, the staff gossips about a child who frequently uses the restroom without purchasing any items. Approaching the hallway, a cafe worker shouts a firm greeting to get Haibin's attention as she walks by. The worker in the green apron scolds Haibin, reminding her that only paying customers can use the washroom. Other customers recognize Haibin and notice she is in trouble, while the worker questions why she isn't home. Haibin looks down in shame as onlookers mockingly wonder if she is homeless while explaining the term's meaning. Seulbi and Jae-jung suddenly appear, telling Haibin they were waiting for her and inviting her to join them. Jae-jung leads Haibin away while the pink-haired Seulbi offers to have a private chat with the cafe worker. Jae-jung and the other girls welcome Haibin to their table, surprised by the coincidence of their meeting today. Haibin looks up with tearful, shimmering eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness from her brother's former school friends. The group comforts the crying girl, offering tissues and reassurances that everything will eventually be okay for her. One of the girls asks Haibin to explain exactly how and when Hye-sung's behavior started to change. Haibin explains that her once kind brother became mean and began restricting her access to their own home bathroom. Jae-jung observes that Hye-sung's personality shift affects everyone, while the girls wonder if he is actually ill. Haibin admits she isn't sure, but suspects his behavior is specifically linked to an obsession with the bathtub. Haibin recalls her brother's anger and shows a note he left warning her not to drain the water. The group discusses the possibility of a mental illness or obsession resulting from the tragic accident in the ocean. Haibin stares blankly, her eyes wide with confusion as she asks what accident they are all talking about. A gasp escapes the girls as Jae-jung realizes Haibin is unaware of the tragedy and tries to dismiss it. Haibin insists on knowing the truth, expressing relief that her brother's friends haven't completely given up on him. Jae-jung nods and comforts her, explaining they have realized there must be a deep reason for Hye-sung's change. Looking determined, Jae-jung admits the real challenge is whether Hye-sung is willing to return to his normal self. Seulbi suddenly appears back at the table, carrying a tray filled with various desserts and drinks for the group. Seulbi presents a tray heaped with treats, explaining that the worker sent them as a sincere apology to Haibin. When Jae-jung asks for a treat, Seulbi playfully tells him to get lost, prioritizing the food for the girl. Surrounded by new friends, Haibin feels happy while the older students watch her enjoy the delicious snacks. Jae-jung wonders why Hye-sung is acting this way, despite having a little sister who clearly cares so much. The group sits together in the cafe, preparing to discuss a potentially dangerous plan to help their friend. In a flashback, Seulbi and her friends happily greet a distant-looking Hye-sung as they pass in the hallway. Back in the classroom, Jae-chong rests a hand on Hae-seong's shoulder, trying to reach out to his detached friend. The teacher scolds the class about applications, specifically calling out Hae-sung for slacking off since the summer ended. The teacher orders Hae-seong to his office, while the black-haired boy responds with a quiet and submissive acknowledgement. Hae-sung approaches the teacher's office door, the sign hanging clearly above him in the quiet, sunlit school hallway. Inside the office, the teacher confronts Hae-sung about his uncharacteristic behavior and his complete lack of effort recently. The teacher notes his lack of focus and missed assemblies, questioning if the ocean accident caused this change. A respectful bow accompanies Hae-sung's apology as he lies to his teacher just to be allowed to leave. A loud yell echoes through the office as the angry teacher demands Hae-sung return and face him. The teacher cruelly insults Hae-sung's manners and upbringing, while the black-haired boy remains stoic and unmoved. Hae-sung's sharp retort causes the teacher to scoff, mockingly asking if the student intends to strike him. Standing amidst the quiet office, Hae-sung listens as the teacher scolds him for displaying his personal flaws. The teacher gestures emphatically, boasting about his own past struggles to lecture the silent boy on perseverance. Mentioning Soonbin's tragic death, the teacher insists Hae-sung must simply move on, accusing him of ruining his life. Jae-jong and Solbi appear shocked in a mental flash, questioning why the teacher would weaponize Hae-sung's private life. A stark rejection fills the void as the reality of the teacher's insensitive lecture begins to sink in. Yoon-hae appears in a vision, lamenting that no one can truly understand the depths of what they experienced. A bitter laugh escapes Hae-sung's lips, his expression hardening as he stares back at the lecturing educator. Claiming his authority as a guardian, the teacher warns Hae-sung against talking back in such a disrespectful manner. The teacher looks bewildered and offended as Hae-seong begins to speak his own cold, blunt truth. Hae-sung questions the teacher's logic, highlighting the absurdity of comparing their vastly different life stages and hardships. A visible tremble shakes the teacher as Hae-young accuses him of scolding a student just to feel superior. A low murmur rises from onlookers as Hae-sung continues his verbal assault, standing tall against the fuming man. A sudden whack sounds as the teacher strikes Hae-sung with a heavy book, venting his unbridled frustration. Chaos erupts as another teacher tries to restrain the man while he continues to whack the unresisting boy. Despite being called a scumbag, Hae-sung remains remarkably calm, dismissing the teacher's opinions as mere noise. With a hollow laugh, Hae-seong declares his indifference toward school records, planning a life far away from academia. The teacher screams for Hae-sung to quit school, making a violent threat as the boy walks away. Back in the quiet bathroom, Hae-sung leans close to the tub where the long-haired mermaid resides. Resting her head on her hand, Yoon-hae explains her simple desire for peace and the unhappiness caused by others. Hae-seong agrees with Yoon-hae's feelings of doom, finding a dark kinship in their shared sense of misery. A soft hug sounds as Hae-sung pulls Yoon-hae close, seeking solace in her presence within the water. Hae-sung gazes at her with desperation, asking why he cannot simply stay by her side for all eternity. The boy looks up, his eyes wide and vulnerable as he searches the mermaid's face for an answer. Yoon-hae questions if her disappearance would be better, leaving Hae-sung visibly shaken by the thought of losing her. Desperate, Hae-sung begs her not to say such things, clutching her and insisting she understands him best. Overwhelmed by emotion, Hae-sung apologizes to Yoon-hae, hiding his face against her as he laments his words. High above, a hidden smartphone taped to the ceiling captures every word of their intimate and disturbing conversation. In the school gym, a teacher bellows orders to the class, while students murmur amongst themselves about the lesson. A quick tap sounds on Jae-jong's shoulder as a classmate asks to be his badminton practice partner. Jae-jong declines the offer, determined to partner with Haeseong, despite the black-haired boy's recent withdrawal from everything. Jae-jong approaches the solitary figure of Haeseong, holding out a racket in a hopeful attempt at reconnection. A sharp turn sounds as Haeseong ignores the invitation and walks away, leaving Jae-jong standing alone in the gym. A creak sounds as Haeseong exits the building, followed by Jae-jong, who desperately tries to stop his retreat. Letting out a heavy sigh, Haeseong admits he can no longer tolerate his friend's persistent attempts to reach him. Haeseong continues his lonely walk, leaving a stunned Jae-jong behind to process the finality of his rejection. A painful throb sounds in Jae-jong's heart as he watches his former friend disappear into the distance. Turning back, Jae-jong bluntly asks Haeseong if his sudden change is all because of someone named Yoonhae. Haeseong freezes in absolute shock, his eyes wide as he realizes his secret might have been discovered. The scene shifts to the group sitting around a table, ending their meeting with a somber goodbye. Jae-jong and the girls debate whether to inform young Haebin about the troubling discovery they just made. Selby asks the group for any information on Yoonhae, but no one recognizes the name from school. Jae-jong and the girls discuss the strange bathroom encounter, wondering if Haeseong was secretly smoking or worse. Looking deeply troubled, Solbi wonders why Haeseong is pushing them away for a girl they've never met. The group sits in heavy silence, contemplating the possibility that their friend has completely abandoned them for a relationship. Jae-jong points out that the girl's way of speaking on the recording is extremely unsettling and odd. Pointing to the phone, Jae-jong notes that the girl speaks as if she isn't even a person herself. The dark-haired Solbi defends the girl on the recording as Jae-jong listens skeptically at the quiet cafe table. A contemplative silence follows as Jae-jong rests his chin on his hand, weighing the gravity of their recent discovery. Trembling with visible shock, Haeseong stares wide-eyed at Jae-jong, his voice quivering as he asks how his secret was found. A sudden slam sounds as the enraged Haeseong pins Jae-jong against the wall, demanding to know how he found out. With a violent shake, Jae-jong gasps for air as Haeseong grips his collar with frantic and overwhelming desperation. Shuddering with fear, Haeseong recalls his belief that he was protecting his friends from something truly terrifying and dangerous. Haeseong continues to clutch Jae-jong's shirt with trembling hands, his expression a mask of raw and frantic distress. A distorted, glitchy image of a sinisterly smiling Jae-jong fills Haeseong's vision as he admits his fear of his friends. Jae-jong staggers back with a painful cough while Haeseong watches, his aggressive posture collapsing into visible, shaken distress. Panic seizes Haeseong as he looks around, terrified that Yoonhae might have overheard the loud and violent commotion. A sudden rush sounds as Haeseong flees the scene, leaving a coughing Jae-jong alone to process the sudden rejection. Back in the classroom, Jae-jong looks around in bewilderment, wondering where his friend has disappeared to since gym class. Haeseong's desk sits empty and silent, with only his backpack and uniform remaining as a stark reminder of his absence. In the hallway, Solbi and the girls confront Jae-jong about his mistimed mention of Yoonhae while he offers a sincere apology. Solbi expresses deep guilt for the secret recording, while Jae-jong resolves to deliver Haeseong's abandoned belongings to his house. Carrying the heavy green backpack, Jae-jong walks through the crowded afternoon streets while checking his phone for any new messages. Yellow chat bubbles appear as Jae-jong texts Haebin, asking if her brother is home and if anything had happened recently. A sharp click sounds as Haeseong enters his home, his face hardened and cold as he looks toward his sister. Haeseong coldly orders Haebin to stop contacting his friends and cruelly confiscates her phone for an indefinite period. Haebin's eyes fill with tears as she stares at her brother, visibly shattered by his increasingly unrecognizable and cold behavior. Amidst the scritch of pencils, an art teacher announces the time limit, while Jaejong focuses intently on his workstation. A soft swish sounds as night falls, and Jaejong arrives at a dark park where he spots a hooded figure. With a thud and a tap, Jaejong drops the bag and uniform on the park bench next to the silent boy. Lowering his head, the hooded Hyesung announces he is there to provide his final answers to his persistent friend. Jaejong demands to know why Hyesung abandoned his friends for a girl named Yoonhae, standing firmly before the seated boy. Looking down, Hyesung makes a chilling confession, stating that he is actually the one obsessed with the girl, Yoonhae. Standing under a street lamp, Jaejong argues that the secret recording proved Yoonhae is a toxic and harmful influence. Jaejong questions why he would seek a stranger's permission for life decisions, while Hyesung explains their long childhood history. Frustrated, Jaejong asks if his friends mean nothing, but Hyesung insists he and Yoonhae only truly have each other. Jaejong reminds Hyesung that Soonbin specifically asked him to reach out and not suffer through his deep pain alone. Jaejong lists everyone who worries for him, demanding to know why Hyesung remains so completely obsessed with the girl. A sharp swish sounds as Jaejong emphasizes how desperate their lost friend Soonbin had been to help him. Hyesung's gaze turns cold and indifferent as he dismisses the memory of Soonbin because he is no longer alive. Enraged by the heartless comment, Jaejong clenches his fist tightly, his eyes burning with intense anger and deep betrayal. A violent whack sounds as Jaejong's fist strikes Hyesung's face, the impact sending the boy sprawling across the pavement. Back in the bathroom, Hyesung tells Yoonhae that someone knows about her, though he swears he never told anyone. Looking downcast, Yoonhae admits she heard the entire conversation earlier, her gaze fixed on the floor in heavy silence. Hyesung leans in close, calling Jaejong weird and creepy as he tries to console the long-haired girl in the tub. Yoonhae reaches out to touch Hyesung's face, questioning why he chose to run away from the difficult confrontation earlier. Grabbing him firmly, Yoonhae observes that Hyesung knew his friend would eventually become a significant problem for her. Hyesung looks up with a terrified apology, admitting he acted out of pure fear and wasn't thinking at all. Looming over him, Yoonhae coldly declares that anyone who bothers him or their peace simply needs to disappear forever. Turbulent, crashing waves fill the scene with a sense of chaotic energy, reflecting the dangerous shift in the story's tone. Yoonhae asks Hyesung what he is willing to do to make the boy disappear from his life for good. A loud crash echoes through the park as Jaejong kicks Hyesung to the ground, his fury reaching a peak. Whack after whack sounds as Jaejong pummels Hyesung, screaming in rage at the boy's insensitive and cruel words. Jaejong pins Hyesung down, venting his bitter frustration and regretting that they were ever friends in the first place. Raising a fist, Jaejong demands to know if Hyesung even realizes how much the late Soonbin truly cared about him. In a flashback, the reddish-brown-haired Soonbin sits at a table, expressing his deep concern for Hyesung's current well-being. Soonbin pleased with Hyesung to lean on his friends, desperately wanting to be there for him during his struggle. Hyesung rubs his head in distress, thanking his friends for their unexpected support during their somber gathering. Yoonsol weeps over her family as Jaejong sternly warns her not to speak so recklessly in front of Hyesung. A soft rustle sounds as the glasses-wearing friend packs a bag, marveling at Hyesung's resilience despite his tragic upbringing. The glasses-wearing friend notes Hyesung is struggling and worries their clashing personalities prevent the boy from truly opening up. Looking downcast, Jaejong implores the group to remain steadfastly by Hyesung's side should anything happen to him. The glasses-wearing friend looks downward, struggling with a dark, resentful thought he never wished to acknowledge until now. Tremble and drip sounds fill the air as the boy wishes Soonbin had survived instead of the battered Hyesung. A crowd gathers as a man in blue intervenes, demanding the boys stop their violent brawl in the street. A heavy pant sounds as the glasses-wearing friend threatens to kill Haeseong if he ever contacts them again. Bruised and bloodied, Haeseong stares blankly with hollow eyes, visibly shattered by the finality of his friend's rejection. A haunting image of Yoonhae appears as she reflects on the cold fury she felt seeing Haeseong's fresh wounds. Graduation energy fills the classroom as a student excitedly asks her teacher, Mr. Kim, for a final commemorative selfie. A quick slide sounds as the teacher jokes about their departure, while students laugh and bid school life goodbye. A firm grab sounds as a hand retrieves a green backpack, leaving the empty classroom for the very last time. Standing alone, Haeseong gazes at a bouquet of red roses left on a desk amidst the graduation day bustle. A bouquet of red roses rests on the desk, accompanied by a card wishing the recipient luck in high school. The camera zooms in on the graduation card, highlighting the simple yet poignant message of congratulations and future hope. A slide and clack sounds as Haeseong exits the school, his green backpack slung over his winter parka. Haeseong pauses in the hallway, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears as he processes the end of his school life. Soft steps sound as Haeseong walks down the long, bright corridor, leaving his past behind for a new destination. A loud swish sounds as a small boat cuts through the water, carrying Haeseong toward his hidden aquatic sanctuary. Leaning against the boat's railing, Haeseong looks out at the horizon, seeking the only person who truly understands him. A look of anticipation fills Haeseong's face as he arrives at the cave, his breath visible in the air. Yoonhae splashes happily in the water, waving a warm welcome to the boy as he approaches her hidden pool. Smiling brightly, the long-haired Yoonhae waves with genuine joy, her eyes sparkling at the sight of her favorite visitor. Haeseong waves back with a gentle smile, the weight of his recent hardships momentarily forgotten in her magical presence. Inside the dimly lit cave, Yoonhae tells Haeseong to close his eyes as she prepares a special surprise gift. Haeseong obediently closes his eyes, waiting patiently for the mermaid girl to reveal the treasure she has been hiding. Yoonhae presents a small yellow toy submarine, her eyes fixed on it with a mix of nostalgia and deep pride. A blue-tinted memory shows a young Hyeseong watching the same yellow submarine bob in the water long ago. A soft reach sounds as Hyeseong realizes she kept his childhood toy, but Yoonhae quickly pulls it away from him. A sharp yank sounds as Yoonhae refuses to let him touch it, declaring the yellow submarine her property now. A soft hug sounds as Yoonhae clutches the toy, calling the small yellow submarine her #1 treasure. Haeseong lets out a soft grin, telling Yoonhae the toy is hers forever since he never returned to claim it. A gentle float sounds as Yoonhae observes the submarine, wondering if it's broken since it no longer moves alone. A rattle sounds as Yoonhae winds the wing, delighted to see the toy submarine finally moving through the water. Haeseong laughs softly, looking genuinely happy for the first time as he watches Yoonhae play with this small submarine. Suddenly, Haeseong's expression turns to one of pure shock as his gaze falls upon the mermaid girl's injured tail. Horrified, Haeseong asks what happened to her tail, noticing deep, painful wounds marring her green, scaly mermaid skin. A quick pull sounds as Yoonhae hides her tail, dismissively claiming she was merely scratched by a sharp rock. Haeseong remains unconvinced and deeply worried, suggesting ointment while the mermaid girl insists she is perfectly fine. Yoonhae smiles radiantly at him, stating that his sincere concern alone is enough to make her feel much better. A long pause sounds as Haeseong looks at her, a shadow of doubt and unease crossing his weary face. As night falls, a shivering Hyeseong huddles by a candle while Yoonhae asks if he is feeling sick. Shiver after shiver sounds as Hyasung complains about the intense cold, his breath frosting in the frigid night air. Yoonhae asks how he stayed warm as a child, but the boy admits his memories of that time are fading. A warm vision of a mother sleeping with 2 children under a thick quilt represents the comfort he once knew. Reaching out, Yoonhae offers a soft promise to keep him warm and protect him from the cave's biting cold. Yoonhae pulls Haesung into a close, intimate embrace, her calm eyes searching his as she provides him solace. Hyasung leans into her warmth, finding a dark and desperate peace within the mermaid's arms as the candle flickers.